Upcasting spells in D&D allows you to use higher level spell slots to cast spells of lower level. This is useful whenever you need a specific spell but have expended all of your lower level spell slots. But some spells gain additional benefits when cast at higher levels. And on this list, we're going to go over the spells that get the most benefit out of being upcasted. Kicking us off at number 10, we have Bestow Curse. Bestow Curse is a 3rd level necromancy spell. It takes 1 action to cast, has a range of touch, and lasts for up to 1 minute with concentration. The creature you bestow a curse on makes a wisdom saving throw. If they succeed, nothing happens. But if they fail, a whole slew of bad things befall them. They are cursed with disadvantage on saving throws and ability checks that use an ability score of your choice. You usually pick Wisdom because the next downside is that on the start of every turn, the curse makes the creature make a Wisdom saving throw which causes them to waste their action to do nothing on a failure. It also specifically makes them worse against you in a fight, as they do an extra 1d8 damage with your attacks and they have disadvantage to attack you. Now, Bestow Curse isn't considered a particularly good debuff spell at its base level. All of these effects are good, but the single target nature, the concentration, and the lack of any range makes it kind of a risky proposition when there are potentially more powerful spells to throw at 3rd level. But Bestow Curse, while a middling 3rd level spell, is a potentially amazing upcasted spell. When you upcast it at 4th level, the duration increases to 10 minutes with concentration. This doesn't really fix the major problems, but when you upcast it to 5th level, the duration becomes 8 hours with no concentration necessary. And this is one of the absolute best things you could ever give a debuff spell or any concentration spell for that matter. Removing concentration makes Bestow Curse as a 5th level spell unique among seriously debilitating debuff spells. Nearly every debuff spell as powerful as Bestow Curse will require concentration no matter what spell slot you use. With Bestow Curse, you can completely hamstring a creature and then throw another concentration spell on them, perhaps targeting that wisdom saving throw they'll be struggling with. Now, there is an argument that a single target 5th level spell that does nothing on a successful save isn't worth it compared to more reliable control spells. But there's no doubt that Bestow Curse upcasting benefits, removing concentration, makes it one of the most improved spells by upcasting. A lot of people only consider Bestow Curse worth casting at all as a 5th level spell because of that, as it's such a marked improvement on an otherwise underwhelming spell. Also, it's worth noting that it gets further benefits for upcasting past 5th level. At 7th level, the duration increases to 24 hours, and at the final upcasting of the 9th level spell slot, it becomes permanent until magically removed. Not quite as game-changing as removing concentration, but it would be quite nasty for whoever you decide to curse. Next up at number 9, we have Moonbeam. Moonbeam is a 2nd level evocation spell. It has a 5-foot radius stretching 40 feet into the air in a cylinder. It takes 1 action to cast, has a range of 120 feet, and a duration of 1 minute with concentration. Moonbeam's effect is fairly straightforward. Any creature who enters the area of effect for the first time on their turn, or starts their turn there, makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failure, they take 2d10 radiant damage, or half as much on a save. You can move the area of effect every turn with your action, up to 60 feet, letting you move it onto new targets when necessary. Now, typically, damage-based spells are some of the worst options to upcast. As prominent example, Fireball going from 8d6 fire damage to 9d6 fire damage is pretty low impact on the spell's overall power. Unless you're hitting an absurd number of creatures, 1d6 is not worth a better spell slot most of the time. But Moonbeam has the right combination of qualities to get the most out of an upcast for a damaging spell. Firstly, Moonbeam has very high damage dice for a damage spell with d10s. So when you upcast it, it gains 1d10 extra damage for each spell slot, which already makes it a lot better than most other damage spells. 3d10 is a significant damage increase over 2d10. But what's more important is that Moonbeam does damage over the course of multiple turns. This lets you apply those extra d10s every single turn on potentially multiple enemies, getting more and more value for upcast every turn it stays active. Comparing it to the primary 3rd level damage spells like Fireball or Lightning Bolt, you can get a whole lot more damage out of the same spell slot with an upcasted Moonbeam. Those damage spells average 28 damage on 8d6, while 3rd level Moonbeam does average a smaller 16.5 damage on 3d10, but you do get to add 16.5 average every single turn without expending any more spell slots. 2 turns of Moonbeam and you're already passing up a Lightning Bolt on average damage. Moonbeam does have some downsides of needing concentration and having a smaller area of effect, but that turns it into a situational decision more than anything. Moonbeam competing with game-changing damage spells like Fireball and Lightning Bolt really shows just how good an upcast it can be. Honorable mentions go out to similar spells like Call Lightning, Heat Metal, or Flaming Spear, which each have some of the qualities of Moonbeam, but either don't get as much damage per level or have more restrictions on when they can be used. And with the number 8 spot on this list, we have Hold Person. Hold Person is a 2nd level enchantment spell. It takes 1 action to cast, has a range of 60 feet, and a duration of 1 minute with concentration. Hold Person allows you to target a humanoid and force them to make a wisdom saving throw. On failure, they're paralyzed for the duration. Hold Person on its own is an incredibly powerful spell due to how rare and deadly paralysis is in D&D. It allows anyone who hits the paralyzed creature in melee to automatically deal critical hit damage, making it incredibly lethal. One of the main limitations of Hold Person is it's only good for potentially taking down one opponent. If they make their save, it can cost you your turn for nothing. But with Upcasting, you can help minimize this problem. The main thing you want out of Upcasting is to get as much bang for your buck out of expending the higher level spell slot. Hold Person does this by effectively doubling its power every time you upcast it. Every level you upcast Hold Person allows you to target an additional humanoid within 30 feet of your original target. So as a 3rd level spell, you target 2, as a 4th level spell, you target 3, and so on and so on. This turns Hold Person from a debilitating single target spell to a multi-target control spell. It also increases the likelihood someone will suffer the effects of the spell thanks to hitting more targets, getting a lot more consistent use out of your action. Each spell slot increase is like casting a full additional spell that would already be worth your action in most cases. This holds true for Hold Person's higher level variation, Hold Monster, that works on anything but undead. Though Hold Monster is a 5th level spell and upcasting it to a 6th level and 7th level is a bit more pricey compared to Hold Person when it comes to upcasting value. In both cases, you're transforming a single target control spell, for functionality, into an area of effect one. And nothing scales better than hitting more than one target. Next up at number 7 on our list, we have Major Image. This spell is a 3rd level illusion spell. It has a range of 120 feet, a duration up to 10 minutes with concentration. Major Image is a bit of a complicated spell, but it boils down to create an illusion up to a size of a 20-foot cube. The illusion can create sounds, smells, and temperatures on top of its visual imitation to make it more convincing. Though physically interact with it reveals it, as any creature that touches it will pass through the illusion. You can also actively move and change it while you maintain concentration, allowing you to make the illusion appear like it's doing nearly anything, such as having a creature carry on a conversation or transform it into something else. Illusions are very tricky to use, but when used correctly are incredibly versatile. The more convincing and creative you make an illusion, the more you can do with it so long as the creatures you're trying to fool aren't immune to the illusion or make a successful investigation check against your spell save DC to discern it. Major Image is one of the most unique upcasting benefits in the game. If you upcast Major Image with a 6th level spell slot or higher, the illusion becomes permanent. This completely changes the nature of the spell on a fundamental level. With a 5th level or lower spell slot, it's just a temporary short-term magical deception. But with that 6th level or higher, suddenly you can start putting illusions anywhere, doing anything permanently. You can create an illusion of a dangerous monster like a beholder defending your base of operations to scare away would-be intruders. You can permanently disguise an entrance to a location to make it nearly impossible to find for anyone who doesn't know where it's at. Just like a regular Major Image, an upcasted Major Image is only limited by your imagination, but in an entirely different dimension of use cases. It's not just a better version of the spell, it's basically an entirely new spell because of how much nature of the spell changes from becoming permanent. Appearing at number 6 on this list, we have Invisibility. Invisibility is a 2nd level illusion spell. It takes 1 action to cast on a creature you touch and has a duration of 1 hour with concentration. Invisibility is one of the most effective and widely used utility spells in the game. Making yourself and your allies invisible allows for characters to sneak into areas they otherwise couldn't or surprise enemies from seemingly nowhere. The biggest downside of invisibility is that oftentimes when you use it, you end up having to split the party up, waiting for the invisible creature to finish their sneaking before executing any action as a team. But that's where upcasting can solve your problem. By upcasting invisibility, you can target an additional creature for each additional increase in spell slot. So at 3rd level, you can target 2 creatures, at 4th level, you can target 3 creatures, and so on and so on. This is one of the few ways in the game you can make an entire party that might not have the best stealth capabilities across the team, all capable of stealthing together. Even though a 5th level spell would normally be needed to achieve a group stealth on an average 4-person party, if you have 2 people who can cast invisibility, then you can get away with only having 2 3rd level spells instead. Or if someone in your party is so stealthy they don't need invisibility, that means you can pull off a total group stealth with less investment, all thanks to invisibility being able to be upcasted. You can get a lot of value out of this, as making your entire party invisible is one of the best ways to inflict surprise on your enemies. Getting a functionally free round of combat before your opponents do anything is usually game over for the opposition, especially as anyone attacking from invisibility usually gets advantage on their first attack on top of everything else. Upcasting invisibility upgrades the purpose of the spell from a single target scouting and assassination tool to a group combat buff. Upcasting doubling the effectiveness with every spell slot and adding an entirely new avenues of gameplay to already one of the best utility spells in the game makes it a great spell to consider using higher level spell slots on. And at number 5 on this list, we have Banishment. Banishment is a 4th level abjuration spell. It takes 1 action to cast, has a range of 60 feet, and lasts for 1 minute with concentration. Banishment is a very powerful control spell. It targets a creature's charisma save, one of the most commonly weak saves for enemies, and on a failure, the target is shunned away into another dimension for the duration. Nothing happens on a successful save, and if the target is native to another plane of existence, they'll be shunted there. For instance, a demon would be shunted back to the abyss. If not, they go into a harmless pocket dimension. Creatures native to other planes of existence can be permanently banished if you keep them banished for the full 1 minute duration. Otherwise, when the spell ends, the creature returns to the space they were in when they were banished, or the nearest unoccupied space if they can't return to their original one. Banishment is much like a previous spell in this list, Hold Person, in that it's a control spell that targets an additional creature for each level you upcast the spell. Interestingly, unlike Hold Person, the additional targets don't need to be within 30 feet of the original target, making Banishment's upcasting a little bit better as you get to fully use the multiple targets with Banishment's 60-foot range. On top of that, Banishment is just a potentially more game-changing spell to affect multiple creatures. It works on any type of creature, making the multiple target function a lot less conditional, as it'll work on any combination of creature types. Even Hold Monster fails an undead, but Banishment doesn't. On top of that, the condition to permanently banish a creature that's from another plane comes up a decent amount of time around the levels you would have access to the spell, and it becomes more common as you level up and gain higher access to spell slots to upcast it. You'll find a large number of fiends, aberrations, celestials, fae, and elementals originate from other planes. So a not insignificant percentage of the time, this goes from being an upcast for multiple target control spell to a multiple target instant win spell against these particular types of enemies, making it all the more impressive to upcast. Taking the number 4 spot, we have Armor of Agathys. This is a first level abjuration spell. You cast on yourself and has a duration of 1 hour with no concentration needed. Once cast, you gain 5 temporary hit points, and any creature that hits you with a melee attack while you have any temporary hit points remaining takes 5 cold damage. Armor of Agathys is a spell only warlocks have access to normally, and because of that, it's uniquely designed to be very good for upcasting, as warlocks, by the nature of their pack magic spellcasting, only cast spells at their highest level spell slot. When you upcast Armor of Agathys, you double the effect for each spell slot expended, gaining another 5 temporary hit points and 5 cold damage. If you cast it with a second level spell slot, you gain 10 temporary hit points and deal 10 damage to melee attackers who hit you. Third level grants 15 and 15, etc, etc. What makes Armor of Agathys even more effective as an upcast spell is even though it's doubling the damage and temporary hit points, it's actually achieving more than that. As you increase in temporary hit points, the chance a single melee attack will deplete all of them in one hit goes down significantly. So against a melee foe who goes to hit you multiple times, you might get far more than just double your value on the damage component. As an example, say you upcast this spell at 3rd level. Someone attacks you in melee and hits you for 10 damage. Well, you still have 5 temporary hit points left, and they take the full 15 cold damage. If they try to hit you again, they'll take another 15 cold damage thanks to remaining temporary hit points. As a pure damage spell, it won't compete with other 3rd level options like your typical Fireball or Lightning Bolt. But the duration means you can cast it preemptively, saving yourself actions during the fight itself, and those other damage spells don't give you a huge cushion of hit points on top of it. The way Armor of Agathys deals damage makes the value it gets for being upcast even greater than just doubling the overall effect, which is why it earns a high spot on this list. Coming at number 3 in this list, we have Counterspell. Counterspell is a 3rd level abjuration spell. It has a range of 60 feet and takes 1 reaction to cast whenever you see a creature in range casting a spell, where it has the effect to interrupt the target of the process of casting that spell. If this spell's a 3rd level or lower, it automatically causes the spell to fail. If the target spell is 4th level or higher, you're required to make an ability check based on your spellcasting ability modifier, where the difficulty is 10 plus that spell's level. If you have the typical 16 in your spellcasting stat, that means attempting to counterspell a 4th level spell has about a 50% chance to succeed. Each level above that lowers your chances by 5%, but you can get around that by upcasting your counterspell. If your counterspell is upcast to 4th level, it will automatically work on 4th level spells like it does on 3rd level or lower spells. The same is true for every level you upcast it to, all the way up to the 9th level. Counterspell is one of the most powerful measures players have against spellcasting enemies. Spells usually have the highest potential for impact in a fight, and the higher the spell slot, the higher the impact. Add on the fact that you typically only use 1 spell per turn, even for enemies, means you are functionally trading your reaction for your enemy's most powerful action. And you're usually trading equal level spell slots when you upcast it, making the investment to spell slots even. Anytime your reaction can rob an enemy of its turn, it's super worthwhile. Even more so when it's robbing them of such a powerful action. Even without the upcasting, Counterspell is often worth it at 3rd level just for the chance of negating an enemy spell. But upcasting Counterspell to ensure your Counterspell works is one of the most useful and important upcasting benefits in the game. Counterspell is probably the most frequently upcasted spell in the game, just because you know exactly what you're getting every time you upcast it. And it's pretty much always worth it to upcast Counterspell so it automatically works. It's not just a powerful function, it's a fundamental function of how Counterspell works, making it an easy addition to this list. Slotted in at number 2, we have Bless. Bless is a 1st level enchantment spell. It takes 1 action to cast, has a range of 30 feet, and has a duration of 1 minute with concentration. You can target up to 3 creatures with it, and for the rest of the duration, they gain a 1d4 bonus to all attacks and saving throw rolls. Despite its low level, Bless is one of the best buff spells in the game. There aren't a lot of easy ways to buff your team's chance to hit outside of giving advantage, and Bless is one of the best ways. This saving throw bonus is also incredible, and Bless is one of the few spells that actively helps you retain concentration on it by buffing that concentration saving throw. Bless does have one odd downside that often comes up, especially in very early levels. It only targets 3 allies. Your most common Dungeons & Dragons party is 4 members, so someone is usually getting left out, and that's where Upcasting comes in. For every level you upcast Bless, you get to target 1 additional creature. So a 2nd level Bless will now encompass your poor 4th party member who was left out. And as you gain allies, such as animal companions, dungeon master controlled characters, or even the odd summoned creature your party can make, you can scale up Bless to meet those needs. Other upcasted spells often fully double their effects, either with extra targets or full numerical improvements, but it can't be ignored just how good Bless is as a buff spell on its own right. So ensuring you can include as many creatures as possible as you gain levels makes it a great spell to upcast. An interesting way to look at upcasting is if the upcasted version of a lower level spell is comparable to other spells at its new level. As an example, 3rd level spells are often considered a huge step up in power level for spellcasters in D&D. If Bless only existed as a 3rd level spell that now gains its benefits to 5 creatures, it would still be one of the best 3rd level spells in the game. So even if it might not be getting double its targets every level it's upcasted like other spells, the total effect you're getting is comparable or better, though some spells might give you more than double your targets. Finally, shambling into number 1 spot on this list, we have Animate Dead. Animate Dead is a 3rd level necromancy spell. It has a cast time of 1 minute, a range of 10 feet, and a permanent duration. Animate Dead is a grisly spell. At its base level, you target a pile of bones or corpse of humanoid in range. The spell animates the target, making a skeleton or zombie, depending on if it's bones or a corpse. You can control the undead with a bonus action so long as it's within 60 feet of you. The undead will follow any order until it's complete, otherwise they just stand still and defend themselves. The permanent duration means you can use multiple spell slots, creating multiple undead to control. The downside is, after 24 hours, the undead stop following commands unless you recast Animate Dead to reassert control. Now, Animate Dead is an interesting avenue for a summoning style build, as you can potentially create far more monsters than most conjure spells thanks to duration and do it well in advance of any fighting. But zombies and skeletons on their own aren't very threatening, making just casting 1 Animate Dead at 3rd level pretty underwhelming. You can usually get a lot more than a single zombie or skeleton with a 3rd level spell slot, but that's where upcasting comes in. With a lot of upcasting spells, you are doing well if it's doubling your spell's effect. Animate Dead does even better. With a 4th level spell slot, you can animate 2 additional undead, tripling the effect of a 3rd level Animate Dead. And you add an additional 2 undead for each spell slot that it's upcasted with. That's a pretty big swing in power, and this upcasting potential is what allows for wizards and clerics to animate an absurd number of undead, replacing the quality of a summon with sheer quantity. Creating 5 of any summon for 5th level spell is usually worth it. You can send those corpses into dungeons to trigger traps or take the brunt of an ambush thanks to the duration. You can just use them in a fight, as even though their attack stats are pretty underwhelming, a whole bunch of bodies throwing grapples or shoves at enemies to push them, keep them in place, or knock them prone can be pretty advantageous. Sheer numbers often means you'll be successful regardless of bad stats, or at least force your enemies to deal with them. With the power of upcasting on Animate Dead, assuming you've got a graveyard or other large gathering of corpses nearby, a max level necromancer could put out 83 undead bodies with just their spell slots. And that's thanks to long duration and the 24 hours of control. You could even take a long rest and do it all over again. Those numbers become even more gaudy for necromancer focused wizards, as you get to raise more corpses and add your level to their hit points and your proficiency to their damage with the 6th level subclass ability Undead Thralls. This turns it from raising weak but long lasting summons into a horde of incredibly dangerous summons. Summoning is always pretty high power in D&D, and if you're ever in need of an actual army of summons, then no other spell quite matches up to the upcasting of Animate Dead. Alright, and that's the list. Do you know of any other upcasted spells you think should have made the list, or do you have any ideas for future videos just like this one? If so, please leave those suggestions down in the comments below.